I wanted to address the Shroud of Turin because it could save your soul. It has convinced countless atheists and agnostics to become Christians. The Shroud is the most scientifically studied and scrutinised artefact in all history, and the evidence is irrefutable. The man who was buried in that cloth was brutally tortured, crucified, and resurrected. There are thousands of burial shrouds, but not one, no one has ever left their image on the linen cloth because no one has ever burst back to life before. That said, maybe Lazarus left an imprint on his burial cloth. It's said the Shroud of Turin is God's calling card. People leave their calling cards or visiting cards to let people know that they've visited them. Thus, we know that Jesus came to earth because he left his shroud, his calling card. Italian mathematician Bruno Barbares calculated that the chance that the shroud is not Jesus' burial shroud is 1 in 200 billion with a B. It's also said the shroud is God's receipt. Jesus came to earth to pay for our sins, and he left his receipt. All four Gospels assert that after Jesus' death, his body was wrapped in a linen cloth by Joseph of Arimathea and Nicodemus. Matthew chapter 27, verse 59 to 60 states, Joseph took the body, wrapped it in a clean linen cloth, and placed it in his own new tomb that he had cut out of the rock. And John chapter 19 verse 40 asserts, taking Jesus' body, the two men wrapped it with the spices and strips of linen. This was in accordance with Jewish burial customs. This shroud was found along with a separate folded face cloth in the empty tomb. It's understood that Peter carried the shroud from Jesus' tomb to Edessa in Turkey. Then it went to Constantinople, where it was snaffled by the European knights of the Fourth Crusade. These knights looted Constantinople between 1202 and 1204, killing thousands of civilians and burning, destroying and stealing untold pieces of art and relics. These knights then transported the shroud to France. Here's a picture of the shroud, which is 14 foot long, and you can see the faint image of a man, front and back, who is naked and his hands are placed on his crown jewels. It's believed this is the imprint of Jesus. It's noted the disciples used the Greek word syndon to describe the shroud, which refers to a single piece of fine, costly linen. The Shroud of Turin is made of costly linen and features a sophisticated head and bone pattern, which was a typical weave in Israel in the 1st century. French knight Geoffrey de Charny, who was in possession of the shroud, first displayed it in 1355 in a small chapel he founded in Liry, France. And it sparked controversy as not everyone was convinced it was the Shroud of Jesus. Like the local bishop, Pierre d'Arcis, who wrote to Pope Clement VII in 1389, claimed it was a cunningly painted fake designed for financial gain. He even claimed the artist who painted it had confessed. Thus the theory that the shroud was a medieval hoax was born. In 1453, Charny's granddaughter transferred the shroud to the House of Savoy, who kept it in Chambéry, France. As it transpired, however, a fire broke out in the chapel at Chambéry in 1532, which nearly destroyed it. The Savoy family then moved the shroud to Turin, Italy, in 1578. It has remained there at the Cathedral of St. John the Baptist ever since. In 1983, the House of Savoy officially bequeathed the relic, the shroud, to the Holy See. The first photograph of the Shroud of Turin was taken in 1898 by Italian photographer Secondo Pia during a public exhibition. And much to his surprise, when developing the negatives, Pia discovered the negative reversed the image into a much clearer positive image. The otherwise faint marks on the cloth became clear and detailed, producing a photographic-like image of a man. The shroud itself behaves as a photographic negative. Here is a photo of what is often described as the first selfie. Lol. In 1976, two scientists fed a photo of the shroud into a VP8 image analysis device. This converts 2D photos into 3D topographical maps, and it produced a perfectly contoured human body. It produced a holographic image of Jesus. This finding supports the argument that the shroud is not a painting or a simple photograph, as no known artistic technique can encode 3D information on a 2D surface. I will let Dr. Jeremiah Johnston explain.
In the Shroud, one of the really fascinating things that I've not been able to share on other shows, in 1976, two physicists are at Sandia Labs, Eric Jumper and John Jackson. They're at the Air Force Academy. They have an VP8 image analyzer. The VP8 image analyzer is designed to study what happens to the surface of the Earth after a nuclear explosion. He doesn't have the actual shroud. He just has a photo of the shroud that he puts through the VP8 image analyzer in 1976. Sean, they are blown away because there is 3D encoding on the shroud. There is a topography, almost a holographic nature to it, where the body wasn't even touching the shroud. No other image on Earth has 3D encoding that is holographic in nature. We cannot explain how a 2,000-year-old burial cloth has 3D information encoded in it that looks like a holograph. This is like something out of Star Wars.
Yeah, no kidding.
This experiment was part of the initial investigation that led to the formation of the Shroud of Turin research project, STIRP. STIRP consisted of myriad different scientists and experts who extensively examined and tested the shroud in 1976. It was claimed that the image was painted onto the cloth, but this comprehensive scientific investigation found that the image is not painted or dyed or stained, and it's not a photograph. It's also noted that photography wasn't invented until 1839, and the shroud made its appearance onto the historic record, public record, from the mid-14th century. The research group assumed that they would readily figure out the secrets of the shroud, but alas, to no avail. The exact formation mechanism remains unknown. Top scientists in the world don't know how the image got onto the cloth, and they're unable to reproduce the same image with all their fancy technology today. No one can replicate the hand of God. The radiation theory, which was introduced in 1930, seems to be the best theory to date. That is, a blast of intense ultraviolet light energy burst forth from Jesus' body when he came back to life, which projected his image onto the cloth. This divine light energy consists of several billion watts of energy. Dr. Johnston, however, purports that there were 34 billion watts of energy radiated in a fraction of a second. This intensity is not of this earth, and it's impossible to recreate.
The image on the shroud. This, as we'll see, is the most unique image in the history of all artifacts in the entire world for all time. It has undergone more scientific testing, and it has like 123 different tests. That testing has all been absolutely 100% positive. But here's the deal. That image has to be produced by a tremendous burst of light. And that would be in the order of about 6 to 8 billion watts of magnitude. That's with a B, billion, like 500,000 searchlights worth of light energy emanating from every three-dimensional point in this man's body. That's, by the way, highly unusual for corpses to do. And so for all intents and purposes, we've got really a testimony to a miracle.
I've thought about how this burst of light energy is like the light energy that bursts forth when a zygote is formed, which is the first cell produced when a sperm enters an egg. The zygote, which is the full DNA blueprint for the person, is conceived in light.
Video is under a special microscope and showing the moment of conception. The very moment that the sperm enters the egg, there is a flash of light. And the light has entered the world.
And God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. In him was life, and the life was the light of men, the true light, which lighteth every man that cometh into the world. I am the light of the world. Whoever follows me will not walk in darkness, but will have the light of life.
The man in the Shroud of Turin is 5'11", athletically built, with a typical 1st century Jewish hairstyle, and he has over 700 scourge marks on his body. The Bible doesn't tell us how many lashings Jesus received, but we know that he was scourged. John chapter 19 verse 1 states, "Then Pilate took Jesus and had him flogged." Romans used a flagrum or a flagellum, a whip with metal or bone fragments designed to tear the flesh. 39 lashes is the tradition based on Jewish law. Hence Paul mentioned in 2 Corinthians chapter 11 verse 24, 5 times I received from the Jews the 40 lashes minus 1.
Non fortius!
Respectively, Jesus fulfilled scripture. Isaiah prophesied in Isaiah chapter 53 verse 5, "But he was pierced for our transgressions, he was crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace was on him, and by his wounds we are healed." Jesus knew his mission would be brutal. He was the lamb destined for slaughter. His love for us knows no bounds. This extreme brutality is also alluded to in Isaiah chapter 52 verse 14, as we're told, "His appearance was so marred beyond human semblance, and his form beyond that of the children of mankind." Respectively, I've wondered if the image of Jesus that was projected onto the cloth is somewhat bashed up. I'm not sure if his face looks a bit swollen. The Bible tells us the Roman soldiers punched Jesus in the face and spat on him. Matthew chapter 26 verse 67 states, "Then they spit in his face and struck him, and some slapped him." And Matthew chapter 27 verse 30 states, "And they spit on him, and they took the reed and struck him on the head." The creator of the universe came to earth to tabernacle with his people, and this is how we treated him. The wounds of the man projected onto the cloth matched Jesus' wounds. He was crucified and had nail holes in his hands and his feet, and a spear wound to his side, which happened post-mortem. Respectively, the Roman soldier pierced Jesus' side to make sure that he was dead, which caused the release of water and blood. John chapter 19 verse 32 to 34 states, "So the soldiers came and broke the legs of the first and of the other who had been crucified with him. But when they came to Jesus and saw that he was already dead, they did not break his legs. But one of the soldiers pierced his side with a spear, and at once there came out blood and water." The separation of blood and water indicated a complete stoppage of circulation and the onset of physical death. The spear was a final check, and the flow was definitive proof. They did not therefore break his legs, which was a method deployed to speed up death, because they already saw that he was dead. This in turn fulfilled prophecy, because we're told that none of Jesus' bones were broken. Psalm 34 verse 20 states, "He protects all his bones, not one of them will be broken." And that was fortuitous, because Jesus would be walking around a few days later. The man buried in the Shroud of Turin also had circa 50 holes in his head where a crown of thorns had been placed. The crowns of thorns forced onto Jesus' head was brutal. The thorns are like iron nails which perforated his head. The Roman Empire crucified thousands of people outside the walls of Jerusalem, but there is no documentation of anyone other than Jesus being crucified with a crown of thorns. It's also noted that the blood from Jesus' wounds soaked into the linen cloth before the image was projected onto the cloth. This blood was tested and it's AB blood type. Type AB is the rarest blood type, which accounts for circa 5% of the population. Studies of ancient skeletons in Israel suggested high frequencies of the AB group, over 50%. It's purported that AB blood is Semitic blood. The blood analysed from the shroud contained high levels of creatinine and ferritin, which indicate severe trauma and stress. These chemicals are found in patients who suffer forceful trauma, like torture. So the man wrapped up in the shroud experienced catastrophic trauma before he died. Forensic pathologists also determined that the body in the shroud was dead for 36 to 40 hours, and this timeline matches perfectly the Gospel account from Good Friday to Sunday. The severe trauma this man experienced also explains the bright red colour of blood on the shroud. Usually blood turns brown over time, but this blood has remained red because of the high concentration of bilirubin. Bilirubin is a byproduct of red blood cell breakdown, which comes about from severe physical trauma. When someone is severely tortured and beaten, bilirubin is released into the bloodstream, which acts as a preservative for the red colour of hemoglobin, ergo the blood stays forever red. The shroud was carbon dated in 1988 by laboratories in Arizona, Oxford and Zurich. They independently dated the cloth from 1260 to 1390 AD, which matches the time frame of its first historical appearance. However, as it transpired, the small piece of cloth that they extracted from the bottom corner of the shroud that was visibly contaminated was a repair job. The shroud had been subjected to fires and had been patched up, and so the part of the cloth that they sampled produced the wrong medieval date. They dated a medieval patch that contained cotton threads woven into the linen. The sample does not, therefore, represent the cloth, and we can but wonder if that was deliberate, given the devil's MO is to undermine the evidence for Jesus' resurrection. The researchers were also instructed to take 5 to 7 samples, not just one. The shroud has since been dated by other methods, including infrared light, Raman spectroscopy, and X-ray studies, and these have all placed the shroud's origin in the 1st century. The pollen embedded in the fibres of the shroud also charts its journey from Jerusalem to Turin. Dr. Max Frey, who is the leading expert in dust and pollen analysis in the world, explains that if the shroud was forged in France in the 14th century, as alleged, then only French and Italian pollen would be found on the cloth. But his exclusive analysis found 58 specific pollens and only 17 were native to Europe. The rest were from Palestine and southern Turkey. 38 out of 58 pollens come only from Jerusalem. This means the shroud had been in these places at some point in its history. The microscopic limestone dust the researchers found equally affirmed the shroud's origin in Jerusalem, as it matched the soil samples taken from around the walls in Jerusalem. Travertine limestone was found on Jesus' feet and knees and even the tip of his nose, presumably from when he face planted the ground when he buckled over carrying his cross. The dust and the pollen the shroud picked up on its travels provides times, dates and locations throughout its history, namely Jerusalem in 33 AD, Edessa in 544, Constantinople in 944, Athens in 1205, Besancon in 1349, and Chambray in 1453, and Turin in 1578. One last point I want to mention is that Jesus was naked when he was crucified. I think because he always features a loincloth in the movies, I presumed he would have had a shred of dignity, but no. Respectively, I thought, how humiliating is that, especially for conservative Jewish people, hanging on a cross with no clothes on. It's unreal that the King of the universe went through that ordeal for us, the ultimate humiliation ritual. God humbled himself and died for us, and most people don't seem to care. In summary, it appears the Shroud of Turin is the Shroud of Jesus. There is more evidence for the authenticity of the shroud than any other artifact in human history. It's irrational to deny it. The shroud tells the story of Jesus' agonising death, and it arguably proves his resurrection. Colossians chapter 1 verse 15 tells us that Jesus is the image of the invisible God, ergo anyone who has seen the shroud has seen God. The shroud brings God tangibly close. I'll finish here with a little video that claims to be the best reanimation video of the Shroud of Turin.
This is the best reanimation of the Shroud of Turin I've ever seen. Let's play it.
Now, have I got something amazing to show you? Watch this, it will blow your mind. I'm going to clear up the Shroud of Turin face, and it's going to look hauntingly real. And then I'm going to go one step further and clear it up even more. This is probably the best video I've done so far. The Shroud of Turin is the most scientifically studied object in history, and I think it's because they know it is the real Jesus Christ. This is Jesus of Nazareth, guys. You can just tell it's a Semitic man.